Welcome to Discipleship Dialogues with Ascending Leaders. Ready for transformation in your church? We're here to help you get measurable results and eternal outcomes. Join us as we uncover the vital, often missed concepts that will help you build a vibrant, Christ-centered discipleship culture. Welcome to the Discipleship Dialogues today. I'm Mike Johnson, founder of Ascending Leaders. And with me is Teresa Rossi. Teresa has been on staff at Chapel United Methodist Church almost 25 years. We met a number of years ago when Chapelwood was starting with Ascending Leaders coaching, and they've done 2 church-wide assessments. But Teresa and I are together to really delve into the New Testament scriptures about disciple and discipleship. Welcome, Teresa.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Well, let's begin with that word disciple or discipleship, and just how do you think the New Testament puts it forward? What is that all about?
I think that discipleship and being a disciple of Jesus is about being a true follower of Christ, of observing him in the New Testament and listening to him in prayer in your daily life, and committing your life to following him as your model, your guide, your savior, your friend. It's much more than an intellectual assent to a set of beliefs. It's really about a way of life. In fact, Jesus was called and said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And so I think if we think of Jesus as a trusted companion for our lifelong journey, that will set us up well to be a disciple of Jesus.
Fantastic. That's really good reminder of what it means to be a disciple of Jesus. Now, just take us through a little bit of the first disciples with Jesus in the Gospels. And what do we see there going on? I think we probably see some very interesting things. What do you see?
Well, very interesting things. At the time that Jesus lived, good Jews were looking for rabbis to follow. That was how they were disciples of God, is through the guidance of a rabbi. And so when we read in the Gospels that Peter dropped his nets and immediately followed Jesus, to our Western mind, it seems odd. But in their culture and in their way of being a good Jewish person was to find someone to follow. So if you're on the lookout for someone to follow, it's much easier to say yes when that invitation comes. And so Jesus, when he launched his ministry, he first was baptized by John, and he sought out a band of followers to come with him on this mission that God had given him. And so we see him looking. Jesus is always seeking us. And he's always on the lookout for who he can invite to be part of the God with me life that he wanted to offer people. So we see him out and about. He often went to the synagogue. He often was in the marketplace, in the towns and out in the countryside. And he was looking for the people who had that spark of wanting to follow him. And he made it very simple. So one of his first invitations is, come and see. And that seems like a low-level commitment invitation, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Do you want to know more about me? Well, come and see. And his first invitation were to some of John's disciples, people who were already on a pathway of following someone. And they wondered, who is this? John, our leader, just baptized him. And Jesus says, do you want to know? Then come and see. So that's the first very simple invitation. It's what we might call in the church world now, where we try to set up a low barrier of entry.
Mm-hmm. Almost evangelism, isn't it?
It is. It is evangelistic. It is. Yeah. Just check out God. And come and see by seeing me. I think that's an important thing to remember, is like, my faith is genuine. Come follow me. And that is Jesus's next invitation. If we get into Matthew chapter 3, Jesus sees some disciples, or some potential disciples, and he says to them, come and follow me and I will make you fishers of people. So there's an invitation to make more of a commitment and to actually put your faith into action. And he tells them, I'm going to make you something that you aren't yet. So he's inviting them on a journey of transformation, of action, and of putting faith into their real everyday lives. And thankfully, I think in the church, in this next stage of discipleship, they've come and seen, they've looked, and then they've made the decision to accept that next invitation to follow with their life. Those are the people in the church that we love because they're ready to act on their faith. And it can be a beautiful thing to watch someone begin to say, yes, I will serve. Yes, I will tell other people about what I'm seeing in my life because of Jesus's influence. And the disciples were in that stage, traveling with Jesus, living with Jesus. Jesus went to Peter's hometown and healed Peter's mother-in-law. They were beginning to see Jesus doing what Jesus does, which is to bring sight to the blind, freedom to the captives, helping the lame walk, the blind see. They were seeing Jesus in action, and then they were beginning in small ways to take on a bit of ownership of this and stepping into that themselves. So that's kind of how we would characterize from the New Testament the first and second stages of discipleship.
All right. And that second stage, come follow me. They're learning, as you were saying, they're just learning so much about Jesus. And we do that as disciples, right? In this follow me period, we are learning so much. And we realize there's so much we haven't learned yet.
Oh, yes.
And sometimes this goes on for decades of us trying to learn. And yet there's more in the Gospels, right?
Mm-hmm. There is more.
Tell us about the more.
Oh, my goodness. Well, the more would take a person from learning about Jesus, learning about Jesus's teachings, learning about Jesus's methods, and having that heartfelt drive or call within themselves to be with Jesus more and be like Jesus more, becoming more like Christ. We're created, all of us, from the minute we're born, in the image of God. Our call on this journey of discipleship is to live into that image more and more, so that we're on this process of transformation, growth, sanctification. I mean, lots of churches and denominations have different words for this process, but we're wanting to really be with Jesus for the purpose of being like Jesus. None of this growth in Christ, companionship with Christ, is for our own benefit. It's for the sake of the world. Yeah. It's for the sake of love. It's for the sake of representing Christ. Paul uses the word being an ambassador of Christ, so that we truly can represent God and God's kingdom in this world that needs it so much.
Yeah.
Wow. So we see people in that be with me stage. They might move in addition to being in worship in their church, in addition to being in a Bible study and maybe in a serving role somehow or the other. They might find themselves wanting to just spend more time in prayer, spend more time in solitude, spend more time in silence, in nature, just soaking up God's goodness in ways that aren't like a prescribed church way. Yep. And that's great, because your faith is real. It's quite portable at that time. You're not dependent on being in a place, in a space, in a Western learning environment so much. You can be at your child's school. You can be in your in-laws' home for a week. You can be on a vacation, and you're always sensing the nearness of God at that stage.
So I'm really hearing that stage is a lot about intimacy with Christ.
It is.
You know, I've heard this saying, there's a lot of people who have a personal relationship with Christ, but not necessarily an intimate relationship with Christ. And that's this third stage, is getting to that point, which you're talking about, this be with me, that intimacy,
Yes.
which then forms you much more like Christ in what you do. Is there more after that?
Well, there is. And it's something that I think those of us who followed Christ for quite some time, like, you and I, and it's not age dependent, I don't believe. It might be a bit of life experience dependent, but that's when a person that would really be your whole focus in life. Your waking moments, your first waking moments to your last sleeping moments would be consumed with being with Jesus. Not that you set everything aside. No, in fact, that being with Jesus in that most intimate, remain in me stage, Jesus gives this to the disciples. We see this in John 15, where Jesus says, remain in me, and he gives the parable or the example of a vine and branches. And so a vine and the branches are connected all the time, unless something severs that, like a vine grower might sever a branch on purpose. But in its natural state, that branch is always going to be connected to the vine. And that is how that vine grows. That's how that vine produces grapes or whatever fruit is growing on that vine. So that would be it's a supernatural activity of the Spirit of God, but it's a very natural, in the natural world, we see examples of this all the time, of being so connected to the source that what does it say in Psalms 1, that its leaf does not wither. In whatever it does, it prospers. The tree planted by the rivers that never loses its leaf, in season or out. There's so many biblical images about that. Remain in me, abide in me. And one other thing I'd like to point out is Jesus gives this teaching when he is facing the cross. He is near the end of his earthly life, and he knows what's coming for himself and for the disciples. They're going to be facing hardship. And that need to be connected when life throws life's challenges at all of us is so important and so vital to Christians. Life's going to get hard. Stay connected to Jesus, and Jesus will see you through whatever life has coming for you.
And he is with you, as he promises over and over in Scripture, and he gets you through those pain points. And really, it's not simply for your comfort, but it's for you to be a deeper ambassador for him.
Right. You will be comforted.
Yep.
You will be comforted, but oftentimes that comfort is so that you can be a comfort to others.
Right. Yep.
Maybe not in a real hard time. You, at that point, it's just hanging on to Jesus.
Yes.
But as we move through the life challenges, because we've seen the faithfulness of God, we can proclaim that faithfulness, we can live out that faithfulness, and we can then begin to be the ones doing the invitation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought out the be with me stage and the remain in me stage, because so often people think of discipleship just as follow me. And yet, as Jesus worked with his disciples, there was so much more, in those stages. Is there anything else you could tell us about that last remain in me stage that really would help people? I know I want to be more like that.
Right.
And I'm sure most of our listeners want to be there.
Right.
And yet when you do research with churches, there are really so few people at that stage. What can we say that might help people get to that stage?
I have a friend who told me that you pray more than you think you do. It's very encouraging. I think we need to look within and see, be willing to name the fruit that exists. There is fruit in our lives. And maybe it's a humility thing, or, oh no, I'm not that much like Christ. But you know what? Are you kinder than you were a year ago? Are you more patient than you were a year ago? Are you more outwardly focused? What's the fruit in these 4 key relationships of your life?
Yeah.
What's the fruit? Are you desiring to pray and spend more time with God, so you've got your relationship with God? What do you sense in yourself? Are you drawn to spending more time with God? How is your relationship with other people? Like I mentioned, are the fruit of the Spirit growing and flourishing in your life so that it affects your relationships in your family, with people who are troublesome, with the easy people and the difficult people. And then how are you relating with God's world? How are you in the stewardship of the gifts God's given you, financial gifts, in the gift of your home, your workplace, your environment? How are you doing with God's world? And then there's that relationship with ourselves. What's your self-talk like? Yep. And I think there are people who are so close to moving through the stages, if they would allow themselves to see that as this wonderful, life-giving adventure that it is. It's nothing to be afraid of.
Yep.
Getting closer to God. It's only good.
Yes. So much goodness comes from.
So I would say go for it.
Yep.
And give yourself the room to acknowledge, oh yes, I am growing in Christ. Yeah.
Great. Well, when we think of the disciples, the one that often comes to mind right away is Peter.
Yes.
Exuberant Peter.
Yes.
Jumps out of the boat, Peter. How do you see these 4 stages in his life?
Well, Peter just, warms my heart. He's enthusiastic from the get-go. His brother was one of the first that Jesus said, come and see. And his brother Andrew did that, and then immediately told Peter, wouldn't it be fun to be in their family? Like these brothers, Yep. And so he's always got that enthusiasm, and he's willing. I think it's Peter where it says he dropped his net.
Yep.
He's known to be impulsive, a real doer, action-oriented person. And so watching him move through his journey with Jesus is always pretty exciting. He eventually became in the inner circle of Jesus' disciples with John. And so he got to see, as he progressed in his relationship with Jesus, he got to see more and more exciting moments. He was there at the Transfiguration. However, because of his impulsiveness, because of his lack of sometimes restraint with his tongue or his actions, we see him struggle and stumble as well. I think Peter in the New Testament, we see him moving up through the stages, not in a linear way.
Yeah.
And we're like that too.
Right.
Just when you think, oh man, I'm really close to God, and then tomorrow I will say something I regret, to someone close to me who I love. Peter, I'm not speaking of Peter's life in as it's laid out linearly in the New Testament. I realize that. I mean, he had a major turning point where he was walking along with Jesus with all the disciples, and Jesus stopped them and he said, "Who do you say that I am?" And Peter was the first disciple that's recorded to say, "You are the Messiah."
Yeah.
He recognized Jesus as Messiah verbally and earnestly and purely and truly. However, in the next few verses, he is reprimanded by Jesus for stepping out where he shouldn't have.
Yep.
And Jesus says, "Get behind me, Satan." So talk about a flip-flop of the stages right there, in his life.
Yep.
However, later when Peter is in the week of the crucifixion and he denies Jesus in that courtyard outside where Jesus was being held, he wanted to be near Jesus. He was following him around. The other disciples were hiding. Here comes Peter again. He's out there. He's putting his body, on the line for
Yeah.
Christ, because he could have been arrested.
Yeah.
And yet at that moment, when he's wanting to be with Jesus, he can't take that heat from the people questioning him, and he denies Christ. So Peter's a very interesting study for all of us.
Yeah.
And how we want to be with Jesus, and yet we don't always live up to that calling.
Yeah.
I think the most beautiful story of Peter in the Gospels, read Acts. He really rises to the occasion and starts the church and heals people. And, he really is being like Jesus in those situations. And I think what really jump-started that was in the post-resurrection appearances of Jesus, when Jesus appears to the disciples when they're fishing. And Peter sees them on the shore, and Jesus is just making them breakfast, wants to talk with them, wants to be with them. And Peter sees them from afar, jumps out of the boat, swims to shore. And what does Jesus tell him? He says, feed my sheep. Do you love me?
Yeah.
And by giving Peter that opportunity to express his love for Jesus, his willingness to feed the sheep, and to hear a word of forgiveness from Jesus about the denial that had just happened, I think that just launched Peter into this real place of security in that remain in me stage.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like then he experiences Jesus' promise that I am with you, and what you described in Acts. And that's a pretty incredible place to be at that remain in me stage, and very much seem like him. But
Right.
You just mentioned the book of Acts. Another apostle, he wasn't part of the first 12, but Jesus came to him through, while he was traveling on a road, was Paul.
Right?
And Paul talks about these 4 stages too in the New Testament and some of his epistles, but a little bit differently. Tell us about how you see this in Paul.
Well, Paul uses the imagery of human development. And I think we want to do that too. I think that's a real natural thing. We think of, maybe it's because of Paul and our reading of the epistles, but we talk about childlike behavior, childish behavior, and then we move through adolescence and young adulthood and so on and so forth. And so Paul uses this, talking about caring for his followers. Paul had followers. He had churches. He had people that he was encouraging in the faith. And he says that he himself treated them as a nursing mother takes care of her child. And then he talks about dealing with them as a father with his own children. So we look at, a little bit older child still needs that discipline and that guidance of an earthly father. All of this is found in 1 Thessalonians. It's a quick read. It's a great way to kind of see Paul lay out his ideas about discipleship and followership. And then he talks about Timothy in there, and there's other places in the epistles where Timothy is mentioned. Timothy was a young man who came to faith, as many of us do, through our parents' faith. And he had a call on his life early on, and he apprenticed himself to Paul. And so Paul is encouraging him as a young man to, Paul was not shy about saying, be like me, imitate me. It was his way of saying imitate Christ. It seems a little weird to us. Be like me.
Be like me.
Seems a little arrogant.
Yep.
But Paul was so firmly rooted in his own discipleship journey that he could say that with confidence. So he coaches Timothy. And then later on, he calls the Thessalonians my brothers and sisters, and over and over. And so that's a sibling, that's an equal, peer relationship, not as a spiritual father who's teaching them the ropes, but we're in this together. We're side by side. We're joining arms to, bring the kingdom of God here in Thessalonica. So that's the journey that Paul compares it to.
Interesting. But we still see those 4 stages, just with a more developmental model. So we've covered a lot of territory here in the New Testament, the Gospels and the Epistles. What do you think people should take away? What are some key points that they should remember? How would you summarize this all?
Oh my goodness. Well, I think our kind of key takeaways are that there are 4 major stages of discipleship. You can call them a variety of things. That's one of the beauties I've learned from working with ascending leaders is that as a church moves into a coaching relationship with ascending leaders, then the church can decide how they would like to frame this for their congregation. For example, in our church, instead of calling that 4th stage remain in me, we call it abide in me. We use come and see, come follow me, be with me, and abide in me, and abide with me. So it's all the same ideas, but there are 4 stages. There's other Christian teaching, which is excellent, that might stretch that out to 6 stages. We might talk about the wall a person goes through, some of typical stages of a disciple. I think that's important to remember when you are just living your own life, to give yourself grace. I'm not where I want to be, but there's so much more in front of me in my journey as a Christian. Being a Christian is not a one and done. It's a lifelong following of Jesus that's super exciting and fulfilling. So
terrific.
I love that part.
Wow.
About knowing there's 4 stages and knowing that all stages are important. So our friend Bob Johnson taught me this. He likes to say, when you're raising your family, you don't say, oh, that little toddler, I wish they'd grow up and be like a teenager. Or, oh, that teenager. Well, you might say, oh, that teenager, I wish they'd become a young adult. But you know what I mean? Like, you don't discount any stage. They're all important.
Yeah.
And so I think that goes along with giving ourselves and other people grace. It helps to understand that a fellow Christian, we might see a stumble or a behavior that's upsetting, and yet they're just not as mature in their relationship with Christ yet. Doesn't mean they won't get there.
Yep.
Right? We, as a discipleship minister in the church, seeing the potential of every person is so important.
Yeah.
And in our families, seeing the potential of every person is so important. And we can bring that loving attitude about what's ahead for them in their journey with Christ to all those situations, if we understand the stages.
Yeah. Well, this is great. Is there anything else more you want to add?
Well, I think in the church as well, that understanding the stages helps churches craft growth opportunities for people.
Yes.
Our pastor sometimes says, much to my, sometimes it gets me, and we talk about it, we laugh about it. He says, some of y'all are in too many Bible studies. That the gathering of knowledge about the faith or about Christ, about God, it is helpful, but it's not the end. It's a means to an end.
Yep.
So any of these growth opportunities our churches offer, fabulous worship, invigorating Bible studies, service opportunities that get us out among people that need help. We have to know as disciples, what do I need at this point in my life to grow closer to Christ? And we almost need to be wise consumers of Christian opportunities. I might want to be with my friends in the same Bible study I've been in for 30 years. But is that the best use of my time at this stage in my life? Maybe staying home in stillness, silence, and solitude would be what's needed for me at this time in my life.
Yeah. Sometimes the hard things are actually what you need to do.
Yes, it's hard to lay down something that's been so life-giving for a different season in your life.
Yep. Yeah.
And from a church standpoint, we get a little frustrated too with people that we may not see them as often.
Yep.
Oh, they dropped out of Bible study. Let's not use that language. No, they moved on to what God's calling them to do in this season of their life.
They needed something different.
Yes.
It's interesting, these disciples, the first disciples, Jesus kind of treated them differently at each stage.
Oh,
and people
definitely.
need different things based on their stage.
Right. You remember when he sent out the 72 and told them, don't even take a bag, don't take an extra pair of sandals.
Oh, yeah.
He was challenging them. And they needed that experience in order to see what God could do through them without Jesus right by their side.
Yeah.
I love that example because sometimes people need a push.
Yep. We all need to push at times. So thank you for this conversation around discipleship and disciple in the New Testament. It's been very intriguing, very enlightening, very helpful. Thank you for being with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
And thank you to everyone who joined us for the Discipleship Dialogue. And let's not just talk about discipleship, but let's do something. Let's act today. Go to ascendingleaders.org to learn about how our coaches can help your church, or follow us on YouTube or Vimeo for more discipleship dialogues. Let's take action and take just one step toward improving discipleship in your church. Have a great day.